Coming up on today's episode of DLLS Mavs, we preview Kyrie Irving season, plus which is your favorite season outside of the Mavericks 2011 championship. All that and more on today's episode of DLLS Mavs. Here we go. Hey, what's up, DLLS Mavs Nation? It's your man, Kevin Gray, alongside Mavericks insider Tim Cato, Mavericks analyst Bobby Carella. We are DLLS Mavs. You can find me on X at Kevin Gray Sports, at Tim_Cato, at Bobby Carella. Your favorite guys covering your favorite team every single day. So much to get to on today's episode, including which season is your favorite outside of the Mavericks championship season in 2011. Plus, we preview Kyrie Irving's upcoming year as well, a big one for him as he tries to help the Mavericks get back to the NBA Finals. The best way you can help us grow here at DLLS Sports, like, comment, and subscribe here on our YouTube channel and become a diehard member. Visit alldlls.com/diehard. Fellas, what's going on, man? How we doing? Happy
Kevin,
Wednesday.
You always ask us how we are doing.
Yeah.
Do we ever ask Kevin how he's doing?
I do.
Bobby does.
Well, maybe I'm just the
Oh,
maybe I'm just the asshole here.
well, do you want to say it?
Yeah.
Do you
How
want...
are you doing, Kevin?
Oh,
I'm doing very well, Tim. Thank you for asking. Thank you so much for asking. It's a little bit of an interesting day so far because we've had a Woj bomb about Woj himself. And now, like, everybody on the internet is like speculating who's going to be the next Woj for like ESPN. So
well,
NBA
Kevin,
Twitter's already on fire.
I'm
today.
glad you brought that up. I just want to get out ahead of all this stuff. I'm happy here at DLLS.
Yes.
All right. Don't listen to the rumors. None of them are true.
That
Now, it
you
is
would be
kinda-
replacing Woj?
Yes.
It is kind of
Interesting.
conspicuous, though, that Mark Stein isn't here when this news drops. Bobby brought that to my attention a little bit earlier. So, yeah, exactly. This is the whole Wendy thing. But I don't think there's any truth to any ideas that, you know, Mark's good with us here. I can think I can safely speak for him.
I think
He
you're
said-
talking to him today or tonight or tomorrow.
Well, I mean, Woj just can't compete with a respected longtime journalist who now has a daily YouTube show.
That's right.
And that, I think, if we're going to talk about Stein, if there's anything, his involvement in this is only that he scared Woj into retirement. Yeah, that's when does Stein return from the war? Where is
Wait,
he
what?
again?
No, he's overseas.
Oh,
You know,
okay.
watching one of your favorite
missed Stein.
sports in soccer.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah, he'll be back at the end of the month. I will say real quick though, before we get into our first topic today, any favorite Woj bombs that come to mind over the years now that Woj is retiring apparently to become the general manager of St. Bonaventure's basketball program over there?
I'm not one to diminish newsbreakers, and I respect the hours and work that they put in, but I couldn't remember a single time that, like, I just don't remember a single one of them.
Yeah.
I really don't.
Yeah. Feelings on the professional side. I do really respect that one NBA draft where he was told he couldn't break picks.
That
and then-
was hilarious.
That was hilarious.
That was a great bit.
like, Woj,
that is-
don't drop the picks, okay? Please
That is
don't do
that is Woj's best moment.
Yeah, being focused on, they're lasering in, like they're honing in. That was great.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
was really, really funny.
That was a really good moment. But
Yeah.
anyway, enough Woj talk.
Thank you, Woj, for some fun tweets one time.
Exactly, that one time. Coming up on today's show, we preview Kyrie Irving season. We've got to get to that because he's got a huge upcoming season for him and the Dallas Mavericks. But we kick off our conversations today, gentlemen, with our first topic being, what's the one question that the Mavericks have to answer for you this upcoming year? Drop your answer in the chat as well. What's the one question that the Mavericks have to answer for you this upcoming year as they look to defend their Western Conference championship, Tim Cato?
We keep saying that this is the most talented, the deepest team that we have seen in the Luka era. And I think that is around more or less true, right?
Yeah, I would say so.
I would agree with that.
Can the Mavericks get Luka healthy in the postseason? Can they keep him healthy all season? Can Luka keep himself healthy? When you are in the running for the best player in the world, the questions that get asked about you are, smaller, but they're also equally important. And we've seen Luka, go into the playoffs banged up and hurt multiple times. We've seen him go through really bad stretches of the season. He had a calf injury right before the 2022 postseason started. And we've certainly seen stretches where, he gets an injury and then he just looks bad and just isn't that effective. I want to see if all of this depth, all of these new players can actually result in Luka staying healthy for the entire season. You got to miss some games with a real injury. That's one thing. Staying himself the entire season and being himself headed into the postseason. That's my question.
Yeah, that was going to be my question too. And I don't mind doubling down on that because it is.
Look at you
truly,
not hedging, Bobby. Good for you. Look at you, man.
I'm doubling down, baby.
There you go. Look at you doubling down. Look at you.
It is remarkable that the Mavs were able to beat OKC because Luka could not break down the defense. Honestly, to save his life, he was so banged up. He was so slow. And if PJ Washington and to an extent Derrick Jones Jr. just don't get red hot for 2 weeks, then the Mavs season ends right then and there.
Right.
So that is of the utmost importance. Luka has to make it to April, May, and June feeling good and, more importantly, moving well. I would also say Kyrie. I would add that to the list as well. Kyrie's a guy that throughout his career has been banged up many times, and he's 6'1". He's a little slight. All those bumps and bruises he takes over the season really take a toll on him. He's already coming into the season with a hand deal. You have to make it to round one, game one with Luka and Kyrie at 100%. And so, Tim, to your point about the depth, about the star power, the talent, I feel like going into this season, the Mavs will be bigger and better than almost every single team they face every single time they take the floor. You got to prove that, and you got to show it, and you got to keep those guys' minutes under control, and you have to hopefully win without them when they do miss time. Because if you're gonna go anywhere, even to literally make the top 6, you need Luka and Kyrie for 60+ games.
This is an aside, partially related. I do think that with all the discussion that we've had about the Oklahoma City series. And so much of it devolves down to, well, the role players got hot, and Thunder fans and other outside observers kind of look at that series and say, well, the Mavericks probably wouldn't replicate that shooting, if you ran it back another 7 games.
I'm not alleging they wouldn't.
No, I was going to say I think they wouldn't quite replicate that level of shooting. I think that's true. I think it gets forgotten how bad Luka looked in that series.
Yeah.
And people who follow the Mavericks really closely, they know that. But I don't think that enough was given just to say that this, the team's best player was not best playering, if you will.
Yeah.
And that was a big thing that mattered. Yes, the Thunder got better. And yes, I think if you run that series back with everything about the Mavericks the same and everything about the Thunder the same, I think the Thunder win that series a lot of the time. But included in everything is the same, is that Luka was not healthy. And that's why this is so important.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't, he looked like he was fading down the stretch to some extent. Certainly he had, I forgot what the injury was. Was it another calf thing?
It was a knee sprain.
It was a knee sprain. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Wasn't he double dipping with injuries?
He had a lot of stuff.
He had a
show up
lot
on
of
the
injuries
injury
going
report.
on.
The point is that, I want to see that Luka that we see for most of the regular season in the postseason.
Yeah.
And we saw him at times, and he was one of the best players in the postseason, and he was not as good as he could be. He was not as good as he often was in the regular season. He was certainly not as good as he's been in the playoffs before. That was his worst playoff performance, I would argue, out of all of them. Even 2022, when he came back and had to rehab and get healthy, and still was quite good in that postseason. But yeah, just a healthy Luka and having all the pieces, everything around him to enable Luka to stay healthy, to enable him to stay in shape, to enable him to feel like he doesn't have to do everything, that he doesn't have to carry this team with 50-point nights on the second night of a back-to-back on the road in San Antonio. That's the question for me. That's the most important thing. And it's a big one.
Dilly.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, before I answer that question, I think people forget, before the Clippers series, when he was doing one of his initial, pressers before, game one, he said that, if this was the regular season, he may not have been playing games at that particular point. So to that idea that he was playing injured, I won't even say hurt, he was playing injured because of how serious that knee injury was, and still to have the playoff performances that he had. We know how compromised he was during the Oklahoma City series. That is a great question in terms of, can we get a healthy Luka deep into not only the regular season, but obviously into the playoffs. But for me, the question that I want
real quick, and some of this just to confirm, or just to state again, some of this is on him.
Yeah.
You know, we've talked about how when he's injured, it tends to lead to a Luka that's not in the best shape. It tends to lead to a Luka that is less than the sum of everything that we expect out of him.
Yeah.
And so it is both things, and he has made a huge strides in this area in a lot of ways at a lot of times. But doing that consistently for a whole season, especially with going into a season where he should finally feel that it is not all on him. That to me is the biggest question.
Now's the time for physical, mental, emotional discipline.
Yeah. You know? So it's a Luka question ultimately. Is Luka going to be able to do this? But it speaks to the Mavericks and what they've put around him that he should feel he's in the best place of his career, you know, during his time with the Mavericks, to be able to do this.
And that kind of leads me into the question I need to answer for this season. Is the Klay Thompson signing worth it? All of this we've been talking about in terms of Luka getting to the playoffs, Kyrie Irving, the kind of season we think he's going to have. You brought in Klay Thompson because you couldn't make threes in the most important series of the year, which is obviously in the NBA Finals. And you're having a Klay Thompson who was literally sitting at home like you and I, watching the finals thinking, man, I can actually help this team. If Klay Thompson can answer the question that his signing was worth it, then I think for me, that's going to tell us a lot about how the season is going to go for the Mavericks, particularly how much they rely on their abilities to knock down threes. They got 2 of the 5 guys that made the most three-pointers in the NBA last year now on their team, in Luka Doncic and Klay Thompson. The question on the defensive end for Klay will also have to be answered in terms of how much more does he have left to give on that end to ensure that the loss of Derrick Jones Jr. with his defense, is it going to be as bad with what you're going to be getting from Klay Thompson going into this upcoming year?
In that final series, Boston, as a team, shot 33.8% from 3 and still outshot the Mavs from 3. The Dallas defense, or luck or whatever, limited the Celtics to a horrendous shooting series, and the Mavs were still second best. Dallas shot 31.6% from 3. Now, that starts with Luka, 24.4%, Kyrie, 27.6%. That can't happen again no matter who's on the roster, but Dallas should never be second best from beyond the arc in a series when they have Klay Thompson on their team, especially if the other team is going to shoot that poorly. And, you know, despite the Celtics, they ended up winning the series by quite a few points, because Game 5 was a disgusting, horrible blowout that I've immediately erased from my mind and long since forgotten. But the first 4 games of that series, I guess Game 4 is a blowout too. The first 3 games of that series were like a couple of threes here and there, changing a whole lot going down the stretch. And so, yeah, there's plenty of reason to believe that if the Klay experiment works out, if everything is good, if everybody's feeling good, that it would be at least a much more competitive series. The Mavs still might not win, but it would at least be much more competitive.
A couple threes or a couple sets of 3 fouls changes a lot.
What do you mean 3 fouls?
Well, a couple sets of them adds up to 6.
Yes.
Yeah.
There you go.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Of course. But I mean, dude, it is just unconscionable that, I mean, this is what the Mavs starter shot. Luka, 24. Kyrie, 27.
Really bad.
PJ, 27. Jones, 25%. Your 4 starters that shot threes all shot below 28% from 3.
That's inexcusable,
and they
man.
were chucking, doing some quick math in my head, they took more than 100 threes as a quadrant in the series. Like, that can never, ever, 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 ever happen again.
Yeah, and with a team with Klay Thompson now on it, you would hope that it wouldn't. But now the question will be for him, not just the veteran leadership that Klay is going to bring, but more so on the floor. Is he going to be a difference maker? Because if you're going to bring in a guy that can do the kinds of things that we're accustomed to seeing Klay Thompson doing, he has to be a difference maker. And that's going to be, for Mavericks fans, I'm sure, one of the bigger questions as well. Make sure you throw those answers into the chat as well. What's the one question that the Mavericks have to answer for you this upcoming year? We'll continue to read those as we see them throughout the course of our show. Coming up, though, here in just a moment, what was your favorite season for the Mavericks outside of winning the NBA championship? We'll jump into that here in just a moment. But before we get there, let me talk to you about Rowback. I don't have any golfers on set with me because I asked them a little bit earlier to see if they were golfers. None of them golf, but I'm sure there's plenty of golfers who are watching.
I play pool.
That's not golf, Tim. That's literally not golf at all. But if you do golf, I got some terrific outdoor gear for you in terms of Rowback. Rowback activewear It's quite simple. Best fit, best feel. The quality of the gear just speaks for itself. They got performance polos, performance hoodies, and everyday shorts that are incredibly versatile. You can wear them with an untucked shirt. You can also have an elastic waistband that's for easy comfort with nice stretch fabric as well. Clean look no matter the occasion. You can use code DLLS20 for 20% off your first order with Rowback. They've got amazing performance polos. You got hoodies. Even as it gets close to the fall, you can throw one of those hoodies on when you go out there for an early tee time and be able to have some fun with your golf buddies while you're wearing some Rowback amazing apparel as well. Use the code DLLS20 on rowback.com for a generous 20% off your first order. That's spelled RHOBACK.com. That's 20% off of all polos, hoodies, and shorts with the code DLLS20. Make sure to check them out, and they will have you ready for whatever travels or activities you have. Shout out to Rowback.
Guys, what's the one thing you most know about me?
That you
Any
love
guesses?
Basketball.
Yeah,
You love
that
basketball.
I'm very annoying. But like third or fourth on the list is that I love floors.
And
specifically-
got it.
You know, it's kind of misunderstood. People think I just love any floor. It's not true.
No.
I love Empire Today's floors because with Empire Today, you get shop at home convenience, the right product for your needs, quick and professional installation, and a low price guarantee. Empire Today is the best place to get new flooring. So of course they have copycats, but Empire can't be beaten on quality, service, speed. So competitors advertise low quality products that Empire simply won't carry, and they shouldn't. Empire won't promise the lowest prices because anybody who does that is putting flooring in your home that they wouldn't put in theirs.
Grifters.
It's the worst thing. It's the lowest form of humanity that I can imagine.
Wow.
Grifting floors. So I just want you to know that Empire Today, they keep shopping for floors simple with a curated product selection. Their philosophy is to help you find what you need, not overwhelm you with thousands of choices and substitutions. What they leave out of their selections is as important as what they put in. Their product team exhaustively combs through thousands of product samples each year to find the perfect styles. Schedule a free in-home estimate today. All listeners can receive a $350 off discount when they use the promo code DLLS. Restrictions apply. See empiretoday.com/DLLS for details.
And yes, Ben, you can wear Rowback while you're mini golfing, just in case you were wondering. So, you know, if you're not a real golfer, but mini golf or top golf, whatever, yeah, you can wear Rowback wear as well. Coming up in just a little bit, we'll be previewing Kyrie Irving's upcoming year. But right now, fun topic we'll get into as we get ready for another season for the Dallas Mavericks coming off the NBA Finals. It was a fantastic season for them, for a lot of fans who had a chance to see this team in the finals for the very first time. But there's a lot of other great seasons that the Mavericks have had throughout the course of their history. And we want to know which one is your favorite outside of the Mavericks 2011 championship win. So with that, gentlemen, favorite season outside of the Mavericks 2011 championship team, because that's everybody's favorite season.
Yeah, that is very obviously the top choice.
Yes.
There is no debate about that. But I do think there's debate about what season comes next. And I do think there's a few candidates. Just to run through real quick before we kind of make our choices. Let's start at the very beginning, the 1987-88 season.
First conference finals trip. Took
Yeah.
the Lakers to 7 games.
7 games. They would have played Boston after that.
No, it would have been the Pistons.
The Pistons. Interesting. Would they have won?
Would the Mavs have won?
Ooh,
Yeah.
the bad boys.
I bet the
Ooh.
Mavs could have.
But
They
Have.
would have
taking-
pushed them.
Taking the Showtime Lakers to 7 games, that was impressive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, and it was, again,
And
it
at
was,
the time, the Mavs were considered like the model franchise.
Mhm.
That was literally what they were called.
it was
You know?
8 seasons into their existence. And yeah, it kind of put them on the map in a lot of ways. The 90s, none. No seasons from the 90s. We're not going to talk about the 90s.
There were a lot of great moments from the 90s.
The best season of the 90s was the last season of the 90s because it was
'Cause-
over.
Yeah,
It ended.
100% correct. Then there was the 2002-03 season, and that one stands out for a lot of reasons. It's another year where Dallas nearly got to the finals, could have got to the finals. There's arguments to be made they could have got to the finals, but it was also kind of Dirk's emergence. Is that fair? It was a resetting of the 90s for sure.
Yeah, and spoiler alert, that season is my choice. Would now be the best time to dive into that, or should we keep listing some candidates off?
Well, I think our other options, we can run through them. Mavericks went to the finals in 2006. They had the most wins in franchise history in 2007, the 06-07 season. And then there's the 2021-22 season. They go to the conference finals. But that team quickly, it doesn't, Jalen Brunson leaves. I think it's hard to look back on that one and, just because that team didn't stick around, even though it was an impressive season. Then there's last year, the finals run. And I think what happens in the future will dictate to some level, how this year is viewed. But there's a real argument that it's the best season ever just because they got to the finals, and it hurts to lose in the finals. But, it's still cool to get there, and the expectations this team had were just not quite, as what's the word? There's Dallas knew they were going to have more chances.
Yeah, it was like a disappointed but not surprised conclusion.
Honestly, kind of like 2002-03.
There's different circumstances.
Different circumstances. Tell me about that one. Why is that one your top?
Okay, so yeah, 02-03 is my choice because that year the Mavs win 60 games. All right, and we're gonna have to recalibrate our basketball brains here a little bit to go this far back in the past, because at the time, the Lakers had just rattled off 3 straight titles.
Yep.
Okay, the Spurs won the title in 1999, but they had not become the Spurs yet. The Lakers
was a lockout year too.
Yeah, the Lakers won the title in 2000, 2001, and 2002. All right, so Shaq and Kobe are running the league. The Spurs are upstart. The Mavs are upstart. The Wolves are like trying to do something. The Sacramento Kings are trying to break through. So, Steve Nash was still on the Mavs. So there was no Sun. So, this is a totally different time in the NBA. Pace was slow. Scores were low. And then all of a sudden, here come these 3 weirdos in Dallas. Dirk Nowitzki, this tall, lanky German guy. Steve Nash, this Canadian point guard with stringy hair that licks his hands all the time and is sort of like a hippie. And then Michael Finley, who was the alpha on the team and is now kind of, I wouldn't say receding to the background, but is certainly the 3rd best player, 2nd best scorer, but the 3rd best player. Dallas goes out, makes a big trade the year before to get Nick Van Exel and Rafe LaFrentz. They get Juwan Howard along the way, but
so
then
many trades back then.
They were wheeling and dealing. But the result, what you have at the end of all of these transactions, is going into the 02-03 season, a team that completely defies conventional wisdom in the NBA. Right? Everybody at the time was loading up to stop Shaq. The Mavs said, "Screw that." Our 2 bigs are Rafe LaFrentz, who's like 6'10" and shoots threes, and Sean Bradley, who's 7'6" but is not a banger. Down low with Shaq. We're going to spread the floor. We're going to pour all of our resources into shooting threes. They took 20 of them a game, which was the 2nd most in the NBA at the time.
That's crazy.
20 a game was the 2nd most in the NBA. They were a jump shooting team. They played fast. Their 4 best players were jump shooters, and all of their guys off the bench. Raja Bell, they had Nick Van Exel, they had Adrian Griffin, Walt Williams. All of them were jump shooters, skill players. They leaned into skill instead of the physicality. And the result is they led the league in offensive rating by almost 2 points per 100 possessions, while still, if you can believe it, having a top 10 defensive rating. They were number 1 in net rating by more than 1.5 points per 100 possessions. So this was
Which is to say they were the best regular season team.
They were the best team in the regular season by far.
They were the best team that entire season.
By far. They won 60 games. Dirk that year averaged 25 points and almost 10 rebounds a game. Michael Finley, 19 points per game. Steve Nash, 17.7 points, 7 assists. Nick Van Exel, 12.5 points off the bench. This was the greatest show on hardwood, right? And coming out of the 90s, coming out of a 15-year period where they had not been to the conference finals and where they'd only won a couple playoff series, they were the laughingstock of the NBA for a very long time. All of a sudden, Mark Cuban buys the team. They open a new arena. Dirk is way better than anybody thought. Oh, my God. The Mavs might be cool. They might be good. They beat, in the first round, they beat the Portland Trailblazers despite nearly choking away a 3-0 lead. Very dramatic. In round 2, they beat the Sacramento Kings, who the year before had dispatched them in 5 games in rather decided fashion. They beat the Kings in 7, a very thrilling series. Chris Webber gets hurt, but, it's neither here nor there. Dallas takes care of business. And then they get to the Western Conference Finals. Showdown against the Spurs, who had won the title in 99. had beaten the Mavs in 5 games in the second round in 2001, their first trip to the playoffs in 13 years. And unfortunately, Dirk gets hurt in Game 3. And it's not looking too good. But despite falling down 3-1, the Mavs actually win a Game 5 in San Antonio. They come back to Dallas for Game 6. They have a huge lead in the fourth quarter. And it's kind of unclear at the time, if it goes to Game 7, might Dirk play? Remember, the Mavs had a better regular season than the Spurs. They finished tied in win percentage, or wins at 60, but maybe Dirk plays for Game 7. The Mavs might actually do this. The Mavs might win the series. They might win the championship.
And looking back, he was not going to play.
He was not going
Mark
to.
Cuban, and it was the best thing for his career.
Yes, but at the time, it's unclear. But then Greg Popovich, in an act of desperation, puts little Steve Kerr in the game. Steve Kerr gets hot, gets red hot, hits like 4 or 5 threes in the fourth quarter. Spurs win and knock the team out. But at that moment in time, right, 60-win Mavs beat the Blazers. 60-win Mavs beat the Kings. 60-win Mavs are pushing the Spurs to the brink. You're thinking, like, this might be the team of the 2000s, you know? And, of course, the team was dismantled very soon thereafter, and it kind of fell apart. But at that moment, anything was possible, and it was so much fun. They were changing basketball. It was changing the way the game was played. It was so cool, ushering the NBA into a new era. And for that reason, that is my favorite season in Mavs history.
No, that's a good one.
And very arguably the best, you know, like best favorite, however you want to define this, that was a season that, you know, established Dallas as a team that had, you know, pretty much the best winning percentage alongside the Spurs for that entire decade.
It was the dawn of the Dirk perennial All-NBA, Dirk perennial MVP candidate.
It was
era,
when Dallas fell in love with Dirk, I think. I think that's fair. What's yours, Kevin?
Oh boy, I had one going into this segment, but as I was, you're talking a little bit about some of these teams and running down some of them, it made me change mine. And I'm going to go to one that just happened just a few years ago because I love a good story. I love movies. I love a good story, a good ending. And when someone is facing adversity and they find a way to triumph and be able to, rise up in the end, I'm here for those kinds of stories. And I think about what happened going into the 21-22 season, right? New coaching change. Rick Carlisle, after winning a championship, long time with the organization, he's gone. A lot of organizational turnover and quote-unquote turmoil, if you will, going from that offseason going into next year. The criticism of hiring a Nike executive who had never worked in a front office before, he gets hired as your GM. You bring in a favorite of the Mavericks from a championship team back in 2011 and Jason Kidd, someone who was drafted by this team, won Rookie of the Year as this team. He comes back now as the head coach to pair with a superstar in Luka Doncic, who is starting to have the kind of ascent that we think is going to have him be one of the top 5 players for years and years to come. And now we're going to figure out, well, what is this team actually going to be with guys like Dorian Finney-Smith? You bring in Reggie Bullock. You still got Maxi Kleber, Jalen. You got a lot of these guys here that you think, well, what could happen if you put these guys in a place to be able to succeed? And what happens? This team goes out and wins 52 games. They make a surprising run all the way to the Western Conference Finals. We know that they lost, of course, in 5 games to the Golden State Warriors in a gentleman's sweep there. But every one of those players you think about who had a role in helping that team turn this franchise around from what it had been and what it was going toward, Maxi Kleber hitting 8 threes in a playoff game against the Utah Jazz. Jalen Brunson having to step in for an injury. We talked about Luka Doncic being injured. Injured Luka Doncic. Jalen Brunson having a playoff series of his life within the Utah Jazz series as well. And then the game that still sticks in my mind to this day, even more so than what happened over the last couple of years, and of course making the finals this year, Game 7 against the Phoenix Suns on the road, and Luka Doncic and that team blowing the doors off the Phoenix Suns and had that arena stunned. Spencer Dinwiddie going off, Luka crossing up Cam Johnson, having him falling all over the floor, that game lives rent-free in my head because I don't think anybody saw that kind of performance coming from this team, even with the success that they had during the year, that they would walk into Phoenix and absolutely smoke a team that they were already down 2-0 in that series and find a way to get into that building in Game 7 and torch the Suns. That, to me, is one of my favorites just because the arc of what they were and all the questions that we had for that team at the beginning of the year to what they were able to achieve by the time that season was over with, to me, is a fantastic story based off of all the folks that came in to help try to fix what was, a franchise really that was in turmoil at that time.
It's a good answer. I downplayed it just a touch a little bit, but just the unexpected nature, as you detail, and just that Game 7.
Yeah.
That Game 7 specifically, I think that is easily enough to make it really in consideration. I put this up, summer, over the summer. I put this up. I posed this to fans, to Mavericks fans, what their answer was. I thought it was really interesting that, a sliver of people picked the 02-03 season, like you did, Bobby. A sliver picked the 87-88 season, taking Showtime Lakers to 7. 41% of people said it was 05-06.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
The franchise's first finals. Obviously, they lost in tragic, devastating fashion. I'm curious why. It's some combination, and I really think that a lot of people still feel so hard done by it. That they kind of put aside the frustration with the refs, the controversy with the refs, and say that was the best team. That was the team that should have done it.
Dirk was the best player in the NBA at the time.
Just like
they
the
were
journey.
The best team.
Like a lot of the best season or the favorite season is about the journey you go on, and that was a hell of a journey. It had its own Game 7 heroics from Dirk. That said, I think the best season in Mavericks franchise history is this last season. It's the 23-24 season that ended in the finals, because this is a team that's going to have more chances. And again, history will dictate whether that's the case, but I think that you can look at this team. They got all the way to the finals. They were expected to go a decent ways, but nobody was quite expecting a finals appearance for them. And then they get there. And because nobody's expecting that, and because everybody understands that Luka is still 25, everybody's still understanding that this team is going to stick around for a little bit. It doesn't, I think if you're a fan, it shouldn't hurt as much that you couldn't quite do it. But it did at the same time, after the year prior, after how badly things went, after missing the postseason entirely,
yeah.
To bounce back, to rebound, to reset where the franchise is, to put aside that stench of embarrassment, and to instead, have people associating title contention and seriousness and, just coldness, like this is a team that gets it done. This is a team that stands on business. I think that's the best season for the Mavericks, outside of the championship, until the Mavericks
win
go
the
win
next
another one.
Yeah.
It's interesting you say that, because I think about how the perception of this team has changed with the finals run that they made. We talked about it a little bit earlier. Klay Thompson is here because he watched this team make the run to the finals, and not just the addition of Kyrie Irving and how they were able to take him in and what he's become here. Now he's going to get the chance to help a guy in Klay Thompson assimilate to this team. And I wonder for Klay, to your point, how the rest of the league will react seeing him on this team, and what this could do for the future of how the Mavericks are perceived for the next 3 to 5 years about, that's a place where I can go to feel like I can help win a championship. Because let's just say best case scenario, they do win a championship this upcoming year. The way that this franchise will continue to be perceived going forward will be, that's a destination spot where I can go, because I know that's going to be a place where I can win championships for years to come.
Do you want to know, the beautiful thing of all of this is this upcoming season and this new era of Mavs basketball or whatever that we're watching is the culmination of all the risks and all the chances that they took previously.
Yeah.
Had the Mavs not taken a chance on a guy like Dirk in 2002, maybe Luka isn't the guy that they target in 2018 whenever they get him. Had the Mavs not taken a risk in hiring Nico Harrison and Jason Kidd, maybe Kyrie Irving is not on the team in whenever they brought them in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
And had they not taken the risk to get Kyrie Irving, then maybe Klay Thompson isn't here in 2024. So it's kind of everything. You're the sum of your journey, right? The journey is sort of the destination, which is what makes these trips to the finals special, makes these playoff runs special. But when you add it all together, I think that we're now seeing the sum of all of their, all of their hard work in the past and all the risks that they took. Some of them didn't pay off, but some of them did.
And one of the seasons I was going to mention earlier before I changed it to the one that we discussed was, you think about the 06-07 year coming off the finals loss. This is a team that won 67 games, 67-15 during the regular season, a regular season juggernaut. Dirk Nowitzki wins the MVP. And then, of course, we know what happened in the first round, of course, losing to the We Believe Warriors. But at the same time, every superstar that we've seen has to go through some of those, not just failures, but also those team failures as well. And what Dirk experienced losing the finals and then losing in the first round the next year, and then a few years later getting to the NBA finals and winning a championship, all that part of the character arc of not just him as a player, but also for the franchise, you have to go through some of those teams. And I think for those who think, oh man, that was such a disappointment losing in the first round, sometimes teams and players have to go through some of those things to be able to ultimately achieve that kind of success. And I think that 06-07 year was a pivotal one because that team was on a mission that year to prove that they were going to be the best team in the league. And during the regular season, there was really no argument that that team was one of the best, if not the best in the league in the team, as far as those 67 wins are concerned. So that was another season I was thinking about picking just because of what they went through from the previous year and the mission that they were on, ultimately failing. But then, of course, it eventually led to a championship a few years later.
I mean, I hear you, but I just don't think Dirk Nowitzki should ever feel sad in his entire life. And so
I agree.
That's so valid.
I agree.
Yeah, so thinking back on that one, it's a little bit tough. And I think that Dirk Nowitzki really enjoyed the Mavericks 2024 finals run. I'm going to stick with that.
I think had they not won the finals in 2011, there would be no good memories to be had about 07.
Ooh, man.
You know, and
Yeah.
maybe even to an extent 2006. But because Dirk got the triumph at the end, you know, the little mini failures, grand failures in some cases, and the tragedies along the way all seem to be like worth it, right? It was all part of the journey. But that's only retrospectively. In the moment, that did not feel fun at all.
Oh, no, not at all. No,
It's
not at
a
all.
hero's arc, you
Yes.
know,
Yes.
a hero's journey. And we've watched enough TV shows, we've watched enough that we understand where a hero's journey is going. But Dirk doesn't know he's the hero when he's on it.
He
only
in the
knows it
Australian
afterwards.
outback, you know,
He only knows it
misery.
afterwards, looking back.
Yeah.
And he can appreciate it. And I think all Mavericks fans can as well.
That's the beauty of being able to watch sports. I mean, we talk about what happens in sports all the time with watching these players go through their journeys, these teams going through these journeys as well, but all the ebbs and flows in terms of trying to have success, win a championship, and not only win a championship, but duplicate that success. You have to go through a lot of these things when you're eventually trying to get to being a champion. Let us know in the I was going to say let us know in the chat, but also, you know.
What's up next?
What is coming up next? Actually, Kyrie Irving. We're going to talk about Kyrie Irving.
Yeah.
I almost forgot we're going to talk about Kyrie Irving as well. His season preview. We've got a lot to get to with him as far as what he's got going on this upcoming year. But before we get there, Tim, actually, Bobby, you can talk to me about FOCO.
FOCO. You can get fitted in the best sports gear around. Mav season's about to start. Star season about to start. Cowboy season, unfortunately, has started. And if you want to rep,
Not unfortunately.
if you want to rep teams that aren't the Cowboys, or if you're just that dedicated, you want to keep repping them through all the trials and tribulations they're going through, then FOCO is the place for you. They got hoodies, they got shoes, they got signs, they got bobbleheads, and everything in between. Can you even imagine what's between those things? Because I can. They even have Snuggies. All right. It's about to get a little cold outside. It's about to get a little chilly. I might check out Mav Snuggies. I might try and feel a little good whenever it's cold at night. But if you're going to a basketball game, hockey game, football game, show off your love with team-branded friendship bracelets, jackets, beachwear, even overalls. There's something for almost every occasion. No matter the weather, no matter the mood, no matter the atmosphere, there's something for you at FOCO. They even have some few awesome pieces for our set decoration behind me and over there in the podcast studio as well. So check out FOCO.com or click the link in the description below. For all non-presale items, you can use the promo code DLLS10, Dirk Nowitzki, for 10% off. Again, that's promo code DLLS10 to save 10% at FOCO.com.
Speaking of the Cowboys, I need to check out Sleeper. Sleeper, of course, is the best app for all of your fantasy football league needs and the best fantasy football platform out there today when it comes to Sleeper. I'm calling all ball knowers. It's calling the Sleeper app that you know for hosting the best fantasy football leagues in the game. Allows you to put your knowledge to the test in every game by picking whether your favorite or least favorite players will have more or less than their projected stats each week. I'm taking Dak Prescott to have more than 200 passing yards and CeeDee Lamb to have more than 50 receiving yards this week when they take on the Baltimore Ravens. If you are not high on the Cowboys defense, you might take Derrick Henry to have more than 90 rushing yards this week and Zay Flowers to maybe have 150 receiving yards because of that Cowboys secondary was trash this past weekend. But that's another conversation and another show that you can watch here on DLLS Sports. If you think you have what it takes, download the Sleeper app and use the code DLLS Mavs to get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in 25 states. Check out Sleeper today and win up all the way to 100 times your money, and that is Sleeper. We're not sleeping on Kyrie Irving, though, because his season he had last year was absolutely spectacular as he tries to help the Mavericks get back to the NBA Finals. Kyrie Irving posting one of his best seasons in recent memory, teaming up with Luka Doncic.
Will he have more or less than 1 3-pointer next season?
I would say more than that, a lot more than that.
Okay. Do you think we can get good odds on that?
Probably. You can probably get pretty good odds on that when you get ready to play on the Sleeper app this upcoming season for the Dallas Mavericks. But, Bobby, Kyrie Irving last year was spectacular for this team. Epic performances. One of my favorite moments from last year, the lefty floater that he hit over an outstretched Nikola Jokic arm to win a game against the Denver Nuggets, having the AAC going absolutely.
Can I actually share one quick thing about that?
Oh, please.
I was playing basketball like the week after at a rec center.
Mm-hmm.
I eventually shared this with Kyrie, but there's these kids there, like probably middle school aged, and they're all just trying that same shot, yelling out Kyrie.
Kyrie!
Just something, just a little thing that shows how, like we know it, but just the way that a player like that and his influence just trickles down into the community, into the children, influences the youth. I just thought that was a really cool thing.
That's pretty dope.
Very cool shot.
The audacity to take that shot over the outstretched arms of Jokic still lives rent-free in my head today. But, Bobby, talk to me about Kyrie Irving's statistical profile from last year as we get ready for his season this year.
Kyrie Irving, 25.6 points, 5.2 assists, 5.0 rebounds, finished a tick, well, I guess 3 ticks below a 50, 40, 90 season at age 31. 49.7 from the floor, 41.1 from 3, 90.5 from the free throw line. In the fourth quarter last year, actually led the Mavs in points per fourth quarter, shot 50, 41, 90 in the fourth quarter. In the playoffs, 46% in the fourth quarter, 48.8% from 3 in the fourth quarter. The dude was the team's closer. We think of Luka as the guy that gets the team going, but it was Kyrie that brought it home. His performance in particular in Game 6 against the Clippers to close them out was just devastatingly incredible. I mean, that was one of my favorite individual seasons in Mavs history to watch last season. Now, Kyrie this year making Dirk $1 million, right at $41 million, does have a player option for next year. And so Mark Stein has been trying to do some reporting about, negotiations or updates on that. But I mean, no matter what, it's a big year for Kyrie and the Mavs.
Make sure you're hitting that like button, by the way. If you're in here watching the video, make sure you hit that like button here on DLLS Sports here on YouTube. Kyrie Irving, not only that great statistical profile that he had, but as Bobby started to mention, Tim, clutch when this team needed him most based on not only what he did in the regular season, but also in the postseason. Folks will obviously look at the NBA Finals and the struggles that he had there as something that they remember from last year. But for you, what sticks out when it comes to Kyrie Irving, what he's going to be doing this upcoming year for this team?
He's very in control of himself, I think, of his game, of what he does on the basketball court. You could probably make some parallels off the court as well, and in the ways that he's talking about. But just on the basketball court, the way that he is able to, a big reason why we're talking about the fourth quarter is because sometimes he did have quiet first quarters. You could make an argument that in some games, maybe it was a little bit too quiet. Maybe he should have been a little bit more involved, active early on. But, I think that speaks to the way that he approaches basketball at this point. He has a very high-level understanding of who he is and what he's trying to do on the court, when to exert himself, when to, make his mark felt. And I think that's truly the sign of a great player is that, in almost any game they play, if they want to, if they feel they need to, if it's time for that they can go make an influence, make an impact on the game, almost, on their, when they decide to, and for Kyrie, that might mean he is sprinting down the court for a transition 3 because he knows he's going to hit, 60% of those. He trusts himself. He bets on himself to knock down that shot, or, he just goes into his bag of tricks and, even if he's not separating, he's got a good defender on him. Maybe he doesn't blow by him. But we've seen Kyrie when he wants, he's like, I'm going to go take a shot that I think I can make. And more than often than not, he does. And so, yeah, I think that he is still going to be that player next season. He's turning 32. He has turned 32. He turns 33 later in the season. It's fine.
He says he believes he's in his prime right now.
Yeah. And there's no reason to think otherwise. I think if there's a big question and we can talk about this next segment. But it's what is he going to do? Is he going to be the lead defender in the starting lineup? And what does that look like for him as a starter? And how many games can he play? I think those are big questions I have for him. And then like just fun ones, like will he actually hit 50, 40, 90? But
yeah, I guess we'll get to the questions. But I think he is so very good at taking what the game gives him, and never really trying to force anything. Like
sometimes almost a little too good.
Sometimes a little, sometimes a little too much. But okay, against OKC, for example, for the first time all season, an opponent was single covering Luka and double teaming Kyrie. And Kyrie, instead of trying to force it, he became a facilitator. And he had a really good assist series. And he was the guy that was serving PJ Washington and Derrick Jones Jr. these open threes, and Tim Hardaway whenever he was out there, Josh Green. Like Kyrie was the guy that was getting everybody going. And he partially did that because OKC demanded it, but also he recognized Luka is not physically able to do that right now. So I have to, and sometimes what the game requires is closing in the fourth quarter by becoming a scorer. Sometimes what the game requires is getting off to a good start. And there's no better example of that than game 1 against Minnesota. Dallas gets off to this very grimy and sludgy start, and nothing's really going, and Minnesota's kind of feeling good. Naz Reid is Naz reading, and Kyrie just turns on the pressure.
And up to this point, he had, I believe the most points he had in a first quarter in that postseason run was 4.
Yeah, I mean,
and it was
running
one
bits.
time he had 4, the rest of them were 2 or 0.
Yeah, he was literally just running bits out there. But in this first half against Minnesota in game 1, he had 24 points on 11 of 14 shooting. He took 1 3. He was putting the pedal to the metal, attacking the basket so relentlessly that by the time the fourth quarter rolled around, Anthony Edwards was huffing oxygen.
Yes.
Like Kyrie heard Ant call him out and said, "All right, man, I got you." And it took him 1 half to say, "Hey, I'm in charge." And like,
I don't think Anthony Edwards knew what he was asking for.
Yeah, but like, and Kyrie made sure that it was nothing personal by doing that. But like, that's what the game needed. That's what the Mavs needed. When Luka would miss games during the regular season, Kyrie was regularly delivering 35 and 40-point games. Balls going out of bounds, Kyrie's diving after the ball. Balls on the floor, Kyrie's hitting the floor. Like
that Clippers series when he had that fast break layup and finished. Yeah, I remember that.
But then also he's making the extra pass too. He's not like, I need to get 30 points tonight. I will make the extra pass if that's the right play. Like he just plays basketball the right way and also happens to be extraordinarily good at it, and very individually talented. But what I really appreciate about Kyrie is that he never forces anything. And I think, Tim, that leads to your point about does he need to give more on defense this season? That's what the team needs. That's what the game is going to ask him. So it would not surprise me if whenever the full trio, Kyrie, Klay, and Luka are all on the floor at the same time, Kyrie's not even shooting. He's just only playing defense, and maybe he'll get himself going whenever Luka's out of the game. Like, that wouldn't surprise me at all.
By the way, hello from the Philippines. Hello from Germany as well, folks watching in the chat as well. Make sure you're hitting that like button here on DLLS Sports here for DLLS Mavs. As we get ready to finish up our show here in just a moment, what will Kyrie Irving be expected to do, and how many games do we think he'll play this upcoming year to really have that kind of dramatic effect on the Dallas Mavericks? But before we get there, Bobby, talk to me about becoming a diehard member here at DLLS Sports.
Yeah, become a diehard. It's less than $7 a month. You get a free t-shirt. Go to alldlls.com/diehard and sign up today. And when you do, you can read the entire website. We have some stuff that's behind a paywall, but hey, no fear for a diehard. You get a card in the mail, and you may or may not get a sledgehammer in the mail too to break down that paywall and read all the great content we have here at DLLS Sports. You also get discount on merch. You get a discount on future events. Like we got some Cowboys tailgate parties coming up. We're going to have some Mavs and some Star stuff coming too down the pipeline as well. So there's a whole lot of events. There's a whole lot of community building to be had on our website, on these shows, on the Discord, at events, in person, hanging out with us and fellow diehards too. So I would recommend you do that right now.
Again, it's alldlls.com/diehard to become a diehard member. You get a physical diehard card as well, 20% off the events.
And the merch is shipping soon. I keep being told soon.
We'll get that merch here soon.
I need my bleeping shirt.
I need my Skyline t-shirt. That's what I'm waiting on.
You also get a physical card that says, "You are Tim Cato's best friend."
Oh, wow. That's a new
Can I just recycle that one?
You best shred it.
Okay.
You don't want somebody accidentally stumbling into it and not knowing what it means.
But it's really important to go back to the Kyrie thing. It's so
what a segue, Bobby. What a segue. That was beautiful.
It's so important that Kyrie does do the I'm going to take what the game gives me thing. Like, because Luka he spends so much time on the ball. He runs so hot. Obviously, he's got a little bit of a temper. If guys start talking trash to him, sometimes he'll do the Michael Jordan, I'll take that personally, and he's gonna go at him. And like, Luka can take over games that way, but he's also dictating almost every single possession down the floor, whether he's shooting or not. But Kyrie is able to provide 25 to 30 points efficiently and 5 assists and do some facilitating, but also like fit in too. And that is such a hard thing to do. Like, almost every guy that averages 20 or 25 points in the NBA wants to dominate the ball and sometimes does dominate the ball, but Kyrie is able to do it like almost invisibly. Like, you just look up and you're like, how the heck did he get 22 points?
He does it like a superstar big man.
Yeah.
He does it like Anthony Davis, where, you're going to lob it into Anthony Davis in the post sometimes, but a lot of the times you kind of just look up and Anthony Davis or Bam Adebayo, they got 18 or 20.
Yeah.
And it just kind of happened.
And it's just, that is so hard to find.
That's not even the best example. Like, maybe Giannis. Yeah. But maybe, anyway, the point of this is, like, that's what big men do. That's not what guards do. That's not what 6'2" guards do. This is a very unusual trait.
Yeah. He's able to fit in alongside Luka as a guard, and that is not easy to do, right? Like, Jalen had that really, really good back half, or really the entirety of the 21-22 season, but his best moments that we talked about, Kevin, you're talking about your favorite season in Mavs history, his best moments during that playoff run came when Luka was not in the game.
That's right.
Kyrie is able to have incredibly effective and productive games whenever he's sharing the floor with Luka for 25, 30 minutes of it.
Here's 2 stats for you. The percentage of 2-pointers that Kyrie made that were assisted, 37.5%.
Wow.
Would you like to guess where that ranks in his career? It's the best. It's the highest. It's the highest percentage ever.
Yeah.
He has never made more 2-pointers that came off assists.
Yeah.
And just think of the cuts. Just think of the the quick transition stuff, the one dribble, all of that.
And he played with LeBron for like 5 years. Like, it's not like he was just playing with a bunch of bums.
Percentage of 3-point shots that were assisted, 65%. Where does that rank in his career? It's the highest ever.
Wow.
He has never, ever made this many threes that came off a pass, came off an assist at any point in his career. Like, he is molding, he is malleable, he is molding himself to what the Mavericks want. And, I think that's just such an impressive mark about him.
He's like leaning into being the best number 2 in the NBA. And that is such a luxury from a coaching standpoint, team culture standpoint, chemistry standpoint of, like, Kyrie's never going to pout if he doesn't get 35 shots tonight.
Which is a wild character arc, because one of the reasons why he left Cleveland, he wanted to go be Batman.
Yeah.
you know, it's funny. You say he's leaning into being the best too. He what he jokes about is he's a stretch 4.
Yeah.
Yes.
But that parallels back with the idea that, it's the stretch 4s, the superstar 4s that, just kind of easily, casually add up points in that way. So
it's
whatever
just,
parallel you want to make.
It's just so freaking valuable for him to have embraced that, and like, had he been with Luka in 2019 or 2020, that probably wouldn't have been the case. We just saw KP go through that with Luka. KP now is accepted being a number 5 or a number 6 option on the Celtics, whatever. Kyrie is like, I'm totally cool with doing what I need to do.
Because those Brooklyn teams, it was James Harden who kind of served that role.
And
it wasn't Kyrie. Kyrie was still very much on the scorer mode.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was gonna bring it back to the idea. I thought it was interesting when you said that in the starting lineup, he may look around and realize what this lineup needs from him is the defense. And I thought that was really interesting. And maybe it's only 6 minutes to start each quarter, maybe a little bit at the end of games. There's still going to be plenty of room for him as a bench player to, get his numbers. But I do think that's interesting. I do think that there are probably more shot attempts coming from the role players this season than last season. And so I kind of wonder if you think about where are those going to come from. I could see this being a lower scoring season for Kyrie Irving. Not so much that he isn't capable of doing 35 or 40 points when he needs to, but I could see like a dozen games, maybe even 20 games where he just has 11 points and he's great. He has a great 11-point game.
He may have 8, 9 assists that night, a few rebounds, a couple of steals, but he's going to have a lot more help with obviously the addition of Klay Thompson. You guys, you continue to talk about, the production on the floor and what he's been able to do to, remake his game in terms of being a number 2. One of the things for me that I have found most interesting about his time here, not just the acceptance from the organization for him as a player and as a person, but the kind of leader Kyrie Irving has now become at this stage in his career with this team. And we know how much respect he has around the league from players who have marveled at his game for years. But now coming into this locker room and being a guy that will talk after games, encourage guys, be able to be that kind of leader. I don't know if we saw that coming from him from his early years, but as he has grown and matured, he has now become a guy that's one of the more valued leaders on this team and is willing to speak up, willing to encourage his guys and be that kind of floor leader on and off the floor that this team has needed to go alongside a superstar, of course, in Luka Doncic, who's going to be looked at, of course, as the face of the organization. But Kyrie's leadership, I think, is something that I don't necessarily thought I saw coming. Now that he has shown that, has been really important for this team throughout.
Yeah, that's also very needed because Luka's just not much of a talker.
Yeah,
in that way, he's not like a rah-rah guy. He'll talk, but it's not really that sort of thing. And that kind of
like Kyrie's become veteran leader guy.
Yeah, and that's
he's
sort of
always been one of the most respected players.
Yes,
among his peers.
Oh yeah,
but I think the emergence of the leading.
Yeah,
dude. I mean, his own teammates they get so excited whenever he does something cool. It's like they're like, oh my god, I can't believe I get to see this. Like they're like giddy. You know? And that's really important. That sort of rah-rah leadership. It's okay, supportive kind of thing. Because to kind of draw a parallel between Luka and Dirk, right? Luka's Mavs and Dirk's Mavs. Dirk was also not really much of a vocal guy. The 2011 title team had Tyson, who was like, we need to get this S together. And they also had Jason Terry, who was much more of like a FU kind of thing. Like, we're better than this. Like that team had a lot of swagger, a lot of confidence, a lot of that sort of thing. But that team was also old and experienced.
I mean, they had Deshaun Stevenson, who had a George Washington portrait tattooed on his neck.
Yeah, and I mean, Jet was getting a tattoo before
How much
the
more
season,
confidence can you have than
Abe Lincoln on your neck? But like
Abe Lincoln, thank you.
This not George Washington.
Yeah,
but
either way, it was a dead president on the side of the neck.
This past season's Mavs team was not old and was not very experienced. A lot of these guys were going through the playoffs for the first time. Some had been to the first round, but almost none of them had been anywhere beyond that, and so Kyrie is doing a lot of teaching, a lot of showing the way, a lot of not like hand holding because these guys are all good, like whatever, but like a lot of it's okay, we're good. The season kind of hung on the brink, hung on the edge of a knife more than once last year, and they were able to keep it together. And I think Kyrie deserves and probably rightfully receives a lot of the credit for that. And like, you have to be able to understand the personality of your team. This season's team will and should be different because they've been there now. But last season they hadn't been.
Yeah,
it's not hand holding; it's pulling teammates up, or it's it's almost like sometimes it's pushing them out, saying like, yeah, you can do this. Go do it. Like someone backstage having stage fright, doesn't want to go. No, get out there. That's the way Kyrie has, treated his teammates, acted towards his teammates in a way that has been just so beneficial. And
like
to all
when your idol is the one that's doing that for you, you know how powerful that is.
Right.
It's like Skin Wade coming in here and giving me pointers. I'm like, Skin, I will do anything for you. Like, please, yes, I will do it. I will do it.
It is interesting you bring that up because we get ready to close the show because Kyrie Irving's playing for a guy that he idolized growing up as a kid, and Jason Kidd being the head coach of this team. The mutual respect that the two of them have for each other. And I think that's one thing that Kyrie's been looking for a long time is an organization and a coaching staff that respects him for who he is as a player and as a person, but also understands that he's growing and maturing as a player and person throughout the rest of his career. And Jason Kidd right now is the perfect coach for him because he understands where Kyrie Irving has been, but also has been alongside and seen his journey throughout the course of his NBA career. And now he has thrived in this situation because he has a guy that's like, yeah, I get you, Kyrie. This organization has embraced him. And Jason Kidd, I think, is a huge focal point when it comes to what Kyrie Irving has become as a player. So Kyrie Irving's in store for a massive year for this Mavericks team. Hopefully a chance to get back to the NBA Finals, but if nothing else, he's going to put on a spectacular show all season long as one of the best finishers that we've ever seen in NBA history. That's going to do it for our episode today of DLLS Mavs. Really appreciate you joining us here on our show. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to DLLS Sports on YouTube. We're here 5 times a week for you here on DLLS Mavs. We'll be back tomorrow. Our guy Mark Stein's going to be joining us on the show on Thursday and Friday as well. So you look forward to that here on DLLS Mavs as we continue our season previews as well. For Bobby, Tim, I'm Kevin. We're DLLS Mavs. We'll talk to you tomorrow here on DLLS Sports. Y'all be good. Peace.
We all silly like the mayor.